What's up, everyone? My name is Wes, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. Today, we welcome the one and only Doc, aka Theyself, onto the show. Over the last few years, Doc has released several varied projects, including an EP they recorded in their truck while on tour. All the while playing with indie specialists LPF, hosting a show on radio station KFAI, and gigging constantly. Fortunately, they found time to chat about their music, the beautiful ambiguity of listener interpretation, some adventures on tour, and more. Without further ado, here's my interview with Doc on the Ear Coffee Podcast. How are you doing today?
I am well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah.
So just to start off on a fairly milquetoast front, why don't you introduce yourself? Just your name, talk a little bit about your project. We'll obviously get into detail. Just what do you think we should lead in with? Like, what do the people need to know?
Well,
you're a very multifaceted. You're a multi-hyphenated. I think that's the right word.
A lot of hyphens. A lot of hyphens in the fire. So yeah, I guess it depends when you're tuning in, because I do have a lot of things going on. But most recently, I released a EP called 1500. And it was actually recorded in my old touring van, which I knew was kind of in that position where it's just like, all right, we either do one more fix or we have to let this thing go.
Like there's one final kick of the can down the road.
Yeah, because it's not like it didn't have life, but it was just like, all right, this has got a year and a half tops. And it's just like we either spend how much money, like, is it more than we paid for the thing?
Yeah.
That's kind of where we were at. So I felt like, because it was already sort of a rolling apartment for several years, the best thing to do was finish an EP in it. But so during like the height of the pandemic, it was kind of easy for me to tour because I'm just one person, and you can there's a lot of breweries in the Midwest that you just
boy, are there
set someone up out on the patio, and then you just put all these picnic tables 15 feet away from each other. So I did a lot of those gigs, and then to pass the time, I would kind of record in the van to keep myself company, and work on arrangements and just kind of be like, all right, what is actually working with this or not working? And this is pretty much how every recording I do ever happens. It's either a deliberate stunt, like I'm free soloing a mountain where it's all right, we got to plan because we have one shot at this, or it's just all these accidental scraps of paper that kind of oh, well, if you look at it this way, that actually kind of is a record.
Turn upside down, do a handstand. It's
This was kind of both, where I already had all this stuff kind of being amassed on my phone, and some of it kind of already had a texture that I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That once I knew, it's oh, this fan is on its last days. It was just well, let's just commit to the bit. Yeah. Let's finish. Just did some full takes in the van, and then that's what we have.
Yeah. Was this all recorded starting when you were gigging around playing breweries in 2020, or is that just kind of when the idea started coming into your mind? What was the actual, more the timeline from taking these songs you've written that you've been playing to recording them in the van, kind of solidifying the concept, if you will?
So this whole project came from me forcing myself to write a song a week, and it became the vehicle for...
Pun intended.
For all these ideas that in my other bands it just wouldn't work or wouldn't be appropriate. I always had these I don't know, wide-eyed idealist ideas of just hey, why don't we record in the woods? And when you're in this 5 to 6 piece band, that it's just eventually it just is or we could record inside with electricity.
I feel that. Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it's a lot of the time, all these ideas where it's oh, what if we just did this? and that became what Theyself was like, because it was a solo thing, and it was just like, all right, we can do a lot of these things cheaply. Because that's another thing. I feel there's like two types of DIY. Like, there's either like the trust fund DIY, and then there's this weird, you have to like build your empire out of like paper mache, and like it's a Tom Waits song, and that's kind of basically what this is, of just like it's this kind of bit that I keep committing to that for some reason just keeps rolling. And that's kind of how it started.
Like the snowball keeps on growing and growing.
I already had a few main projects when this started, and it was kind of one of those, after a while people were like, hey, do you want to play this show? And I was like, oh yeah, let me ask. Like, no, Theyself. So like this kind of just became this thing that like it kept naturally happening. So so the ideas kind of come naturally. I feel like I'm trying to learn from the mistakes of previous projects, of just like, no matter like how much your heart is in it, where it's just like sometimes it becomes Oregon Trail, trying to like get something over the finish line.
Like, we made it across the river, but my son died.
I've literally had bands where it's just like, well, the record's done. We broke up, but the record's done. And we should all be proud, but we are never going to play another show ever again.
Like, I'm getting mixed messages here.
And that's just kind of trying to avoid that, and like kind of learn from my past mistakes of just like, I think rather than obsess over like, everything, because one, I don't have the money to go into a studio and be like, I need to. But two, I
2 weekends just doing overdubs,
right?
like
and I
$1,000
think
a day.
like how much of that is just like letting my mental illness win, of just like obsessing over. It's like, well, then you're just not really doing anything with it. So it's kind of trying to fight that, like the worst aspects of those perfectionist instincts, because I do think it helps you get better as an artist, because you should have your own creative control and be honest with yourself and be like, but I want this out of it.
If you genuinely want and think you can make it better, it's like,
and it's
amazing when you're able to pursue that. But
eventually,
to a point.
I do think like there's always limitations and everything, and just kind of accepting those limitations.
Thank God, honestly. Thank God for limitations.
Right. It's like I think this kind of arose out of that, like rather than like just force, where it's just like it's a David Blaine stunt, or it's just like my next trick I'm gonna record in a van. Like, it was more like already kind of happening, and there were fragments that were just like, oh, this actually just kind of works as this arrangement. What if we just kind of finished that? And there was like a few things where it was just like the guitar and the drums were like already direct anyway, so it's just like, well, that's already there.
It's already there.
But like once it was kind of getting to the point where I'm like, all right, I either fix this van or say goodbye to it. It kind of became like, why don't we finish this? So that it was a little bit of
more
both.
Artistically fulfilling, cost less. Just all the
and
appeal is come from that corner.
That's kind of how we arose. Arove. I don't even know if that's a word. Like, that's how we arrived here.
Yeah. You said arove with such confidence. I was like,
let's go with that.
It sounds like a word.
Yeah. I don't even
know
why I stopped at myself. I should have like arove. Yes.
Just double down.
Yes.
Always commit to the verbal bit. So kind of continuing off of that, but also looking back across all your different projects, solo or otherwise, as far back as we want, what has drawn you kind of to that idealism, that conceptual almost ambition, where even if it's just like a thematic thing where it's like, okay, let's do, and we'll get into each of these releases a little bit more, but like with Wolf Tower, there's like kind of the naming, and with the thematic, like for the writing, which is just kind of happens with EPs, there's a through line with the songs, with the piano album, the more ambient album you recorded, like that fit into that, and then like even just going back to prior projects, what has drawn you to approaching these projects or songs or ideas and recording projects?
I think
let's do this with a concept or with some kind of overarching connective tissue that maybe beyond just like recording in a studio and just kind of doing things a little bit more by the book, which is Perfectly fine. A lot of people do that. That's amazing. Most music is created that way, so not knocking it.
A lot of it is just kind of necessity. It is the mother of invention. I think as far as what Theyself is, it's just kind of learning from all the mistakes of previous DIY projects. And it's not that I didn't enjoy running a label. It's just like if I had to do it again, we would do it differently. And I think learning from those things, it just kind of became more of like, well, okay, you can say this is a labor of love as long as you acknowledge that labors of love are still labor. And you can do this is, like you're either going to do it the scenic route, which is like cheap, and you can kind of do whatever you want within reason. And, if you like something, you can just kind of treat it like a little boutique pet project. Whereas, there was a time, and I don't know if I'm showing my age, where it's like you either did it like militant in the wilderness DIY, where you're like printing your own CDs. Like I remember
making the tapes.
Yeah, it was a big deal
printing,
for
everything.
us. Like when we got the equipment to like burn our own CDs. Like to us,
it's
like
so
we were.
Maybe it's just because I haven't needed to burn like 150 CDs in a row, but like. I was like, I miss the romance of burning CDs.
It's exactly. It's like it came from that. Like so my previous band from that label was called Fairfax, Alaska, and we would.
I don't know if I've listened to, but that name is echoing around in my head. That sounds familiar.
That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were completely DIY, and we ran our own label, and we basically started a label just so we could publish our friends' bands. And
that's the best reason to make a label, I think.
Yeah, and I think we kind of made the mistake of like trying to turn it into a business. And we should have just kept doing it of just like, hey, what would be fun? And because like realistically, you're not going to make money doing this. You're just not. Like it's like you can break even if you're clever, and you can like make enough to like pay the people involved, but like I don't want to sound discouraging, but like it's like I've read interviews with like Grizzly Bear like right after they like opened up for Radiohead, and they're just like, so wow, what a rush, like what's it like doing that? And they're all just like, I still have like 50K in student loans, like I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I'm glad you enjoyed the set, but like I still don't have any money. Like we're still on tour right now.
A lot of these projects came from like, all right, you have this wacky idea, you either do it on the cheap or you don't do it at all. Mm-hmm. So like the Wolf Tower and a lot of these like kind of got named after where they were recorded, because it was just like I either gave myself those parameters of just like, all right, let's try it. And I completely can have at the end of it just be like, all right, I'm not going to release it. But if it has like a certain character of just like, oh, I haven't really heard anything like that before, or I thought it was really good, I would release it. And usually it was the former of just like, this is not what I wanted this to be, but like I learned something in the process, and there is a certain
the act
character.
Of creating has like a certain certain like growth in it. It's like
right, and keep in mind,
the right mindset, I guess.
I'm recording on like toys too.
Yeah.
Like this, like that was a record I recorded in a hotel room on a 8-track recorder that I thought was in working order, but like I ended up having to. The microphone I brought wasn't like compatible with the thing, so I ended up using headphones as microphones, because you can actually do that, and that's why it sounds like that. And like the entire time, I'm like in my head, I'm like, no, this is supposed to be Nebraska, and like, and it's like nothing worked out. So like in the moment, I just picked these songs like that were a little bit more mantric, I guess. And I don't really like talking about the content of songs, just because like a lot of the stuff I do is so simple on purpose. It's kind of like, I don't know. What do you think? Like, it's like I saw
the
David
lyrics
Lynch
for the, and like the songs for that EP especially are very,
it's like
very personal. This like once you start like listening in a little bit, but yeah, I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, this is like,
this means something to
like
me.
The vocal,
but
yeah, it has a very
might mean
clear
something
kind of like
different
lyrical
to
bent,
you.
and like that can resonate. I think without getting into the. Like, here's the autobiography behind every line. Like,
right. I mean,
we
like
could be that podcast, and there are podcasts like that. But we don't need to go line by line. That's a little fucking stupid.
I felt really liberated by watching David Lynch get interviewed, where like when people were just like, explain this, and he's like, no. Like, I think in many ways, this is my most spiritual film. Elaborate on that. No.
Yeah, like, okay, that was the quote.
It's like, wait, you can do that? Like, it's like, so like I don't like explaining. I like the reason he does that is like because there are whole things that I think, you know, like usually when I'm getting overly simplistic, it's just like I'm finding a way in my good Catholic like stiff upper lip, like finding a way to talk about something really deep and meaningful to me, but like really papering over it in a way that like, yep, this is just, you know, generic old trauma. So like a lot of it ends up being in the moment of just like, oh my God, my recording stuff is broken. Like nothing. I was like, okay, well this, you know, like these 5 songs I've been doing live and they vaguely kind of have a theme. And if I like try to do some, you know, you try to do some editing in the arrangement and then
did they all have their titles before you went into the recording? Okay.
You know, like a lot of it just
like, wow,
kinda,
that really lined up on a lot of ways before going, okay, that makes a little more sense.
They were all different things and then it just kind of became one kind of thing.
Synthesized into an EP.
Because it was like one performance in one room.
Yeah.
And like that just kind of and even mixing it is just like, oh, this is all distorted. And it's just like the only way, it's just like I either try to like make it like, let's try to clean it up. And it's like, well, then it just kind of sounds like a demo. And now it's just like, well, what if we just like, it's already fucked up. What if we just keep fucking it up?
Yeah.
That's like the only, and it just kind of became this project where I'm like, you know, you don't have to release this. And by the end of it, I was just like, this kind of sounds weird and I like it. And at the time I was like just named like, there was like that stupid City Pages poll where it's just like best new local, and I was like named one of the 5, and I was just like, that's not what I wanted at all. So like it felt like the perfect time to release that record. You know, like that's normally something you like put in, like that's like your third thing, and like maybe like a Patreon only. But like the timing of everything, where it's just like this is the best new art. I was just like, I don't want this
like
at
kind of
all.
like a lovingly little fuck off. Just
like it just kind of felt right where I'm just like, all right, you're either with me or you're not. And I do think like releasing that first, like it scared a lot of people away. Yeah. Like initially they're just like, yeah, I don't know about that. But like the people who stayed were just like all the people who were like, no, I actually really know about this. And it's like so it's kind of, I don't know, but that's kind of why that got released. Because at the time, I was coming from this position where like getting caught up in what the press thinks of what you're doing kind of ruined both of the other bands I was in.
Yeah.
So like it was like at the point where like kind of it's like, all right, I want to create this little tree fort where like none of that stuff will bother me, and then immediately it's just like. And like at the time it was like the Shackletons, Early Eyes, and then like me. And I'm just like, why am I here? I'm not even a band. And now, and then as soon as that happened, like you get all the people who like just show up to your shows with their arms crossed and just going like, oh, they're not that good. And I'm just like, well, why are you here?
Yeah. Are you even
why are
having
any
a
of
good
us
time?
doing this?
Yeah.
Like none of us are having a good time. So like it just kind of felt right to be like
weeding out the fair weather.
Yeah, of just like I don't think this is going to be well received by anyone except for like people into this and like people who've seen me live and kind of would get a kick out of like, oh, that's how you recorded it, and okay, I can kind of get on board.
Because with any of these, like they're not novelties. Like I feel like that's a very reductive way to refer to that.
They kind of are, though.
Well, yeah, like it's like that. The word does have a factual meaning, but there's like we have as people have built like a negative
Yeah.
connotation to that, where it's like,
Well, I know what you mean,
kind
though.
of-
That is kind
there
of
is
why.
a quote unquote novelty where it's like,
Yeah.
these are all recorded in a hotel room, or these are all recorded
Yes.
in my van, so on and so forth.
It's
Like it's not like in a way that's reducing. It's like it's adding to the
if anything,
the idea,
it's-
adding to the approach.
It's adding to the lore. No,
Yeah.
I mean, like it's both,
all about the lore.
It's both that, but also like kind of not apologizing for the lo-fi, but like just kind of explaining. Like, a lot of these, like, it's kind of you're capturing moments, for better or worse, and a lot of it is just like, hey, wish I could have gotten it more hi-fi, but this is what we got. And at the end of it, they all kind of had this similar character. And it's just like, that's kind of how Roost came about, just because it's like, I didn't expect to release anything because I was like right in the middle of lockdown.
Yeah.
And
it before we even get into Roost, because I really liked that record.
thank you.
It's funny that the last two people I have talked to both released like quarantine, like solo, like piano or like solo instrumental albums. Like, I don't know, am I noticing a trend? Like, why do I keep on ending up talking to people that are doing all like the COVID piano album, which is like, maybe because I'm a sucker for those. I just love that kind of music. So it's a funny little coincidence.
It was like kind of like just a snapshot of what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
And I only released it on Bandcamp for the sake of people. Like I have a lot of friends who like they want long form stuff to paint to.
Yeah.
And when I found all these things, because it was cell phone memos.
Okay.
And another thing that kind of, like the screen cracked on that. So I was harvesting all the memos off that. And I found like these tracks where I was like, whoa, if you put these together, that kind of sounds like an album. And then I dumped it in Pro Tools and tried to clean it up. But like,
it was all improvised, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just kind of like, that ended up kind of being, it's like, okay, well, these are, I'm not going to be able to do these takes again.
Yeah.
Like that, so they kind of have something to it, but it was definitely kind of released online of like, just like, hey, listen to something when you're walking, or like listen to something when you're like painting, or like,
that's like the ambient music dilemma.
Yeah.
Where not that this is like ambient more in like the broader sense, not like, oh, you're making ambient music. But like it is
hard.
It's like there's the Brian Eno quote where it's like the music is meant to be as ignorable as
that's exactly
as you can pay attention. I butchered that quote, but like the idea is that it is supposed to function as fully as something that can be like your kind of your accompaniment as you're painting, as you're working on other things, as you're walking, as you're falling asleep. As much as you can, like, pay attention to it and then draw. Oh, that's an interesting little like the chord change, or that I liked that melody or whatever, or so on and so forth.
That's exactly why that ended up getting released, because it became a thing. It was like, oh, this actually has a certain character, but like I wanted to have. It's like, this is something I want you to be able to be like, it's just passable enough that you can ignore it without being offended by it.
Yeah,
but also like you can
make it offensive, blow it all out.
Yeah, there is like a thing for that, and like I that Eno quote like is kind of getting to the heart of like why that album exists, because it's like I didn't want to have a project where it was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing every time. And so it's just kind of fun. I didn't expect to release
Spotify
that on tape
for sleep streaming bait, where it's like, this is not a real artist, but boy, howdy, is it relaxing.
It's kind of,
this was at least made by a real person. But
yeah, like it's just like it was kind of it felt like the end of the world. So it's just like, oh, like what if someone was just like leaving stuff on an answering machine?
Yeah,
like that was found. That's kind of how that went there. But
when you were sitting down to record and play these takes, did you have was that just more of like a kind of a catharsis, since you're like, I'm stuck here, I have nothing else to do, so I might as well try to,
and then it was
play some music and try to feel a little bit better, find a little bit of peace in that, and then
pretty much
retroactively kind of like found those notes. And
the recording was just kind of like me trying to get better, but like I didn't end up like listening to them to like actually like they just lived on the phone. And like that kind of happens a lot, where it's just like there's these things and like, oh, you find them later, and then it's like, oh wait, can this be can you do anything with this and like piece things together, which is kind of like how this record 1500 is kind of like a combination of the two.
Yeah.
Like it's like this source material, but also like this deliberate stunt to like, all right, we're
reworking,
now
finalizing.
a deadline exists now. So now we're like gonna finish it. And I don't think I would have released Wolf Tower if all those circumstances didn't kind of like come to a head. And I think from then on it just kind of became like, all right, if it feels right, do it, even if it feels uncomfortable, because then you're kind of going somewhere. But like I think like because that was such a weird sound and everything around me was making me anxious, like I was kind of leaning into like, all right, like what if this sounds a lot like how I feel right now, and like can I take my least favorite feeling in the world and make it somewhat danceable? So it's like kind of an interesting time capsule of it, but like I feel like the records I have released are all like nothing like I do live, I guess. It's weird. They're all like time capsules of certain moments.
Yeah, like revisiting and like listening to these albums, like 'cause I saw you live at the Ice House like early 2020.
Oh,
it was like a weird bill where it was like you played, I think Zach Baker played, and then Vile played.
Vile.
Just like and it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday night. It was just like
that's a long time
that was
ago.
a long time ago. Yeah. But I'm bummed that that's the only time I've seen. But like that performance, from what I remember, it sounded nothing beyond just like the soloistic, which is like it's just you and your guitar and like kind of self-generating everything,
trying to make it as much noise as possible. Like with one person, which is another reason I wanted to go solo, because like there was a lot of times where it's like it's frustrating when you're like being offered bills and you can't do them because like it's hard being in a band. It really is. And like you get all these offers and it's just like, so it just like it kind of became this thing where it's just like, oh, I want to still play the show, but I also don't want people to like book a certain band and then like only two of us show up and they're just like, oh, okay, well this band sucks. Like like
very
I
different
didn't want to be
context, but I've dealt with that in the world of classical saxophone quintets, where there's supposed to be five of us, but only two of us showed up. So we just jammed over Heart and Soul for 20 minutes because we didn't have anything
quintet,
else.
not a duo.
Like that's for five. Like we had repertoire for five, but now there's just two of us and we both play alto saxophone. So there's just Heart and Soul, baby.
This is happening. This is happening. And I think I actually kind of enjoy those moments for like the sake of like the alchemy of it. Like can you actually create something
in these
fun in these circumstances?
Yeah.
And that's like kind of another reason why these records keep coming out, because it's just like, well, that I like did we say art, what was it, gimmick or artifact? But like that's kind of like why I like putting things on tape, because I do think like that it is this little artifact. Because like I think like now that everything gets streamed, I don't expect things to be like, well, I'm not gonna sell this for $30. Like I think like this is more of like a thing. Like this is more of like a field recording that like, it's like, just throw it online, put it on for free, because people might be interested in the process of something like that. But like also I don't want to put it on like this nice glossy, like I want to kind of keep it feeling like it was still handmade, like someone's still discovering something. So like
really
the tapes
like kind of adding to the artifactness of
and
it,
I felt,
versus just like the kind of blank commercialism of just like, well, I found this on Spotify the other day on this Discover Weekly playlist.
It's and I mean I get if people discover stuff that way. It's like this seemed more right.
I'm a hater, but like there is a positive that can come from that. It's like that is one of the, whether you're talking streaming or Bandcamp or just the ability to put these releases out there without having to go through all the rigmarole of like going working with a label, distributing, doing like an album release, like and
I feel like
obviously
nowadays
most bands do that. So like there's certainly it works for a lot of people, but like that's
works
an
for
appeal
some people.
of the democratization kind of this, where it's like I don't really want to do that, but I still want to put this out there as an artifact, as an extension of my creative process. And I have the tools to do that without jumping through all these flaming hoops.
Exactly. And I think like that just kind of became like, oh, go back to my DIY roots of just like, just go back to that mentality of like, we'll just make something for the sake of making it. Just make it and complete some sort of sentence with it. Like it's like
there's going to be punctuation, even if I don't know which one it's going to be.
Right. Like it's like it's making some sort of statement, even if it's abstract. Like there's a reason for why it was done, and I kind of like doing the tapes for that because one, it kind of keeps things cheap.
Yeah.
And I like, but also like the way I'm doing it kind of leaves the door open where if like I actually did want to go into a studio, it wouldn't be out of place to have a project like that where it's just like I don't know. Like I don't think I'm going to do the same thing over and over and over again, but like I also don't want to shut the door on like if I want to do another album like Roost in the future, like that probably might happen, but like it's I don't know.
Is going into like a studio and doing a little bit more of a less kind of loose, a less kind of not off the cuff. That makes it sound like there wasn't intent or planning put into it. There obviously was, but like you've played in plenty of different bands. You're in LPF right now, which we can talk about in a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
So you've obviously had experience with these things and like know yourself, you know your way around. Would that be something that like, or like what would be the context that would lead you to do that for a Theyself album, for your solo material, whether like no matter what the music sounds like, what the songs are?
I mean, I guess I don't want to be over simplistic and just say budget, but
no, hey, like, that is the most truthful and real answer.
Yeah, like, I think
boy howdy is that expensive.
Well, yeah, I think that's like a part of the reason why this stuff kind of gets done, where it's just like, all right, and I also think I price it appropriately too, of just like essentially everything I've done is like a live album.
Yeah,
like everything is a live take. I mean, like I overdub the vocals, but like so it's kind of. Maybe that's like the one rule, but you can still perform live in the studio, just so to speak. Like the LPF stuff, like everything is like a live take on the track. And I'm sure, Brett went in there and like chopped up takes and like put them together because he's a really good producer. But like there were entire tracks where like, John, Janessa, and I are in like one room recording, and then Rennell is like in the other booth. Like there are tracks on those records like where we are performing live, so it's not like I'm anti-studio. I think as much as
exactly.
I think as much as like it's more of like this whole project is kind of like my DIY grimoire of just like
the artistic bent is not angled towards. Like a super cleanly recorded or like professionally.
Right.
It's leaning into the DIY, into the lo-fi, into the I made this myself with my hands and here it is regardless.
Exactly.
Versus like I bought this not to like, but we're like it's like, oh, this is an album where it's like you can buy this on the CD and just like
I think it's like kind of being able to kind of let the audience know what they're getting into, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like if I ever went into the studio, I don't think I would treat it as like just another tape. Like I would kind of like make that part of the presentation.
Yeah, that atmosphere contributes.
Right. But even then, like I almost like don't really like I feel like at this point I like put stuff out in physical just because it's like the ritual of it.
Yeah, no,
like I don't even think like
I'm not old, but like the nostalgia, it's just like manufactured nostalgia where it's like I didn't grow up with tapes, but when you buy a tape, there's still a certain just like sentiment that's attached to this quote unquote outdated, or even CDs, which is something I did grow up with, where it's like
it's weird
the sanctity of buying physical media.
I think that's what it is more nowadays, is like people want to support you. And like that is the exchange for good and services is like part of the thing.
I know
like,
I succumb to like the collectability of it, where it's like,
I'm
not only am I excited to like help this, like support this artist that I like and like have a album that or like a tape that I want to listen to, but also it's just like maybe this is just me, but like I'm excited to add this to my Discogs later. Just like
oh yeah, no, and
like
I feel like
collection.
the people who add local music to Discogs, like they're the real MVPs, because like I don't think people realize like though that's like the little things that like keep scenes alive.
Yeah,
where it's just like it's not just like buying your favorite local bands, like putting seeing your friends like double grave on Discogs is like that. Like,
and like Gully Boys,
I get
even,
psyched
like,
about that kind of stuff. It's like,
I think Double Grave is in my catalog because someone did that. Someone was kind enough to add like Goodbye Nowhere and some of the other stuff on there.
And it's like, to me, I actually think that like feeds into my DIY ethos of just because I have always kind of had to go to other scenes and be kind of like a fish that swims in several ecosystems, where it's like seeing bands kind of feel like they have to compete in one scene, where it's just like, whoa, okay. Anytime you are competing against another band, you're just driving each other's prices down locally, when you all should be like kind of meeting together behind the scenes and sharing resources, where it's just like, okay, you're getting lowballed here in this market, when in reality you can be getting like such and such more for your time in this market, because this market really wants this thing. And like kind of just actually working together. And like I feel like a lot of people feel like they're playing Mario Kart with other bands in the scene. It's like they
want the blue shells. Like no.
The more bands that you're friends with that end up on Pitchfork, that's a good thing for your community. Like not like specifically, like I mean, just
Pitchfork,
like any
the arbiter of truth.
Oh God, I'm not endorsing Pitchfork. I'm just more like saying it as like
we have you on record as endorsing Pitchfork. You are done.
I mean, I guess it's technically local-ish. I mean,
I had the same job as the guy that fucking founded it, and I would hear about that from customers. Like, did you know that the Pitchfork? I'm like, yes,
I did.
He sucks. Actually. I don't like him. I don't want to hear about it.
I don't want to hear.
He's annoying, but his newsletter's okay.
Well, I guess I'm only name dropping it in the way of like the more like places you see your friends and household names, because like that is kind of like
even within like the music community, like just
that's like kind of when
rise with the tide a little bit.
Like, and that also kind of it speaks to a language like, you know, when you go to Thanksgiving, like my family didn't understand what I did until like I opened for someone they knew, and then they were like, so that's working out for you. And it's like finally hitting.
Thanks, family.
Like, that's kind of what I'm talking about, of just like, no, like you shouldn't have to like get to some capitalist edifice to like legitimize your music. It's more of just like, when you see a band that you're not into succeeding, rather than hating on it, you should be like, well, if that succeeds, they're gonna love my shit. And just kind of accept that, like, okay, if that has an audience, clearly there's an audience for what I'm doing. I just need to find it. And I think a lot of people get caught up like trying to be the king or queen of whatever hill they're on, when in reality, I think it's like, because of the internet democratizing everything, every audience has been fractalized. Like there is no mainstream to tap into. There's like 50
still like
people
a Billboard
over here.
100, but like that's more like radio and like the top, like the people that are already like getting billions of streams. Like
and it's just like,
it's occasionally a TikTok hit or two or something.
And it's like and even like cracking the top 200 chart, it's like nothing happens. Like the only thing that happens is you get to say like, oh whoa, we're on the top 200.
It'll look good on your next one sheet when you're putting out your next release.
I think that's like why people still play South by Southwest. It's just like, it's like, oh yeah, we played we were featured artists.
We were
South
featured
by
at the
Southwest.
Doritos Locos Tacos tent. We got paid $4 and they stabbed somebody.
The top 10
they
brands
took my guitar
of South by Southwest.
Yeah, and then people get like mad when, I don't know if you remember like I put the word controversy in very light quotes, but like I think it was a couple of years ago, or like either 2021, whenever South by Southwest like recently like happened, once COVID kind of allowed for that.
Right.
When the band Wednesday, like they posted like all their expenses and everything, and they're like, hey, here's why this is kind of BS.
I don't
and then people are
understand
like,
why,
you're getting Airbnbs? You should sleep in the van like Henry Rollins and just die on tour.
As someone, I think I can, because I remember this controversy, and I remember talking with a few friends about it, going just like,
get in the van.
Well,
like, shut up.
As someone who's actually slept in their van.
Yeah, same. Like, literally.
That's one of the reasons I like recorded an album in that van, is just because like it wasn't a bit.
No.
Like there were times where like I didn't really want to be in my home situation, so I would book an away gig just to like have an excuse not to like go home. So it's just like I have done the van touring thing, and I think it was romanticized a little too much because people on TikTok were like, oh yeah, just live in your van. So now it's like, oh yeah, it's totally a thing. Yes, you're right, it is totally a thing. That being said, easier said, less often done.
Yeah.
When something breaks, you have to fix it. And like you are going to be traveling at highway speeds. So like if a window breaks, you better fix that pretty quick.
Or you either get that fixed, break the budget, or get a roll of gaff tape or something. And then suffer through it.
It's like I have definitely slept next to like the beach of a lakeside like scene, and that's been amazing. But I've also like had to sleep in Walmart parking lots in Iowa and then like get my tire changed. So it's like, look, I don't think people realize that you can't just sleep on the street. Sometimes people will bust you or like try to rob you. Like it's like if you've never done it, it's dangerous, and I'm not saying it's not doable. I'm just saying, like,
not only is it dangerous, it's not comfortable most of the time either. Like,
so like even if you're trying to be like Spartan, like I'm a ultra libertarian, whatever. Okay, take it from someone who's actually lived your little fantasy.
The only libertarians,
as cracked up to me as you think it is, my friend.
The only libertarians I respect are the ones that are just anti-driver's license. Like, go all in. Like legalize weed, get rid of taxes. No driver's license.
I am actually with you there. Like I don't know if I subscribe to any ism anymore at this point, but like I almost will respect people if you like comically commit to the bit. Because it's like, all right,
unless the bit's like being a Nazi, then it's like, no,
not that I thought you meant that. That's actually,
there is an exception.
It always goes there.
Somehow, over the course of history, fascists keep happening.
Well, and now they're back,
and they didn't go away. They just got louder.
So anyway, my new album.
You can tell I've been listening to like way too many like weird podcasts because I just like can't stop bringing up communism and fascism. And,
well, I mean, it's
talking about like Hitler and shit. And people like, stop it. We're uncomfortable.
What else are you gonna do on the road? Is like listen to podcasts. Like I remember. So
educate yourself and listen to new music. Listen to stuff that you're gonna draw something from.
The last gig I did in Mankato, I actually listened to the This American Life episode about Mankato on the way.
Wow.
And it's just like which is actually really good. If you
I'm a huge This American Life fan. It's shockingly, we're doing a podcast and I like This American Life.
It's definitely worth a listen. If you ever find yourself driving to Mankato, it's like it's a good time, and it's good food for thought. But I remember when Wednesday got so much flack for that, and it's just like, okay, even if you want to live that like ultra libertarian fantasy, first of all, here's why bands don't do that, because like it's already hard enough to do that, but in the context of South by Southwest, like it's too many variables. So like, why is it so hard to ask for basic human decency in the arts? Why
are you criticizing someone for like for a band even just like to not want to sleep in the van a couple nights out of their tour where they're already not getting paid?
And it's like also like I think I don't know. I think all they were trying to do too as well. Like I think people are too terminally online, but I think people like they took that as like some sort of like ask, I guess, like, and they just got angry when in reality, I think all they were doing was just kind of showing to their friends, because every DIY scene, like people complain, we're like, oh, this scene's too bitter or this scene's too this. It's like that's literally scene across America. Seriously. Like literally every scene. So like I think part of it was like they were getting some steam, And I think the reality of it is like they had like enough haters already going like, oh, Wednesday's playing South by South. I told you they sold out. You know, like I think they were just literally shining a light on like, hey, like
this is not sustainable.
Yeah, like we're not trying to be like part of the reason we're doing this is so we can, you know, like I don't know, food would be nice. We're like trying to, you know, feed ourselves and like not like get
our art out there.
Yeah,
through
like
whatever means are offered to us, whether it's South by Southwest or
I don't think they
show
were
back in North Carolina when they were first starting out or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think they were coming off as ungrateful, which I think I think a lot of people were saying like, oh, this band's playing South by Southwest and it's not enough for them. It's like, no, I think they were just kind of saying like, hey, it's hard out here for bands. Even like bands playing South by Southwest are still fighting for. I think that's what they were going for. Yeah. And I think, but like that is the kind of stuff I'm talking about is like bands should be doing that on every level, just kind of saying like, hey, like for all the bands who are out there going like, oh my God, what they're doing is so cool. And what we're doing is just like, we're a mid band. We're never not going to be a mid band. You know, like take that as inspiration of just like, hey, like some of the stuff you're doing, like see those bands actually doing it and realize it's still possible for you. Yeah. But like also like, I think they were just kind of saying like, hey, this is the reality of it. Like we still need to help each other because there isn't that much money in it. And like kind of like cutting people's ladder out from under them isn't gonna help you climb yours.
No, if anything, it's gonna make it harder.
Yeah, and like
there's less ladder,
right? And it's just like so the more bands from your hometown making it is good thing because that means more people are going to be like, oh, what's going on up there?
Yeah,
that like it's like people go to Nashville to like, I don't care who we see, I just want to see a country band. Like they don't remember, they just want to. And to them, it's like, oh, that's good music. It's just like you want people coming to your city going like, I don't care who we see, let's just go to Minneapolis.
Yeah, and we're probably going to have a great time or find a cool new band. Yeah,
yeah. So it's just like
which we think is true, but that we're biased.
So yeah, I guess for me anyway, like part of like the process of why I do this is like it's like literally me just like putting together all these things I wish we did as a band and like never did. It was like this project is just like, yeah, not only can you do this, you can do it sustainably and you can make it work. Yeah. Like I put out weird stuff on purpose and I am somehow like like making it work. So like do your thing.
Yeah.
It is possible to do your thing and you should be out there doing it because like if you feel that strongly about it, like it's like a necessary thing. And but yeah, I just tell people to tour just because I think because of the internet, back to the fractalized thing, I think it's not that the audience isn't there, it's just in different places now. Where it's just like it used to just be like, oh yeah, we want rock, we go to the one place to rock.
Yeah.
And like
Detroit Rock City.
Right. Now I think like if you do a thing, people just kind of have to like, oh, there might be only 50 given people doing that thing. You have to go to the other place and find the next 50 people.
Yeah.
And then when you build another thing, that's 250 people.
Yeah.
And then like it's like that's how it really happens. Like you actually have to just kind of play in front of people you haven't met. And
crazy.
Yeah.
What a novel idea.
You know, it's just like that's where it really happens. But like preventing other bands from doing that isn't really going to help you do anything.
Kind of reminds and like brings me back to what you were saying earlier about how instead of competing, whether it's on tour or locally or whatever, you should just be sharing your resources, supporting each other.
You should be.
I've only toured a few times, and so like you as a touring musician, I'm sure empathize with this, but you are relying so much on the kindness and support of others.
Yeah.
And oftentimes people you just met.
Yeah.
Or have not met yet. Like whether that's like, we have a friend who played with this band and they mentioned, your band's coming through.
A lot of it is leaps
go
of
see
faith.
them like if they need a place to stay, and then they're like, hey, you can stay in our house. Or or just like pulling together a bill last minute, or just like supporting each other kind of no matter what, because that makes the best shows, even if it's to like 10 people.
I firmly
or
believe
100
road
people.
karma is real. I think
seriously.
it is.
No, like that is the best part of tour is like and playing shows is just like being able to like meet new people and whether they follow your band or your music on streaming or
Facebook
Instagram.
friends with people I've met on tours. Like I'm not even in those bands anymore, but we still like each other. Like anytime they do, it's like, oh yeah, you guys released a new single.
You're in a new band, you put on the music.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
go get it, Scott. Good for you.
Cool. So with kind of continue on the note of live shows, you have your residency coming up.
Oh right, yeah,
at the 331 in May.
Yes,
and with that, since we've talked a little bit about how your live show has been a bit different from the actual recorded music.
Yeah,
how are you approaching that? Looking for it, it's about a month away. Is it since it's like kind of like a release residency?
Yeah, because I don't play locally too much just because that kind of came naturally. Like I just kind of kept going to where people were showing up the most, and then it just kind of happened that people show up out of town more than they do in the town. It's just like, okay, rather than have a release show, it's harder to like just was like, all right, I'm gonna play one show and then
one night only.
Yeah, and then everyone you expect like, oh, everyone's gonna be at this, but it's just like there's like a million good shows in Minneapolis at one time, so it's just like I feel like people would still just be like, oh, I'll catch your next one. It's like there isn't gonna be a next one, so like it's like let's just do a whole month and just kind of I don't know. So I like the residency for local shows just because I get that a lot of people either work in the industry, so it's like they can't get it, or the opposite, it's hard for them to get a Tuesday night off. But yeah, I like this bill just because it's like different parts of my performing career with this project. Like Loser Magnet, I ended up being on their first show ever. And so I thought it'd be kind of cool to ask them to play, because I didn't know that until after the fact, and it was like, yeah, this is actually our first show. It was like at the 318 Club. It was like a
319, or is there also a 318?
The three
was it Joe's venue?
Joe Bartel.
I think that was
Joe Bartel.
That was 319.
319.
Like unless someone also made 318, they were just doing all the digits.
It's like that was a really cool show. Like Joe Bartel throws cool shows. Actually.
Yeah. Rest in peace.
Yeah, I know. He's got something.
He just went on tour. He's still playing. I just don't know if they're throwing shows in like the backyard anymore.
Oh, I think he's doing something, but I also don't want to like blow it up.
No, yeah, because this is like a spoiler-free podcast. Yeah, usually.
Yeah. Also, like a DIY. Like I used to run DIY venues, and one of the reasons ours ended is because like we got robbed,
oh my gosh.
It's like there is like a certain level of etiquette of just like, okay, I don't want to go on someone's podcast and be like, yeah, their address, you just stop on by whenever you want.
Or when the one time we like threw, like it was early enough in COVID when we were like doing like a little bit more of like a guest list. It was like a small show, so it was like you have to like when you reach out to get the address, like we'll get your name, like you should be good to go within capacity. It's like, if I have no idea who this person is, it's like a complete stranger. It's like I want to assume the best, but also like this isn't even my house. Like I'm nervous. I don't want to just like put these people's like address out there and just like
it's not mine to give. You know, that's just kind of
like
how I feel about
can't
it.
vouch for you because I have no idea who you are. Like I'm sure you're great, but like
can vouch for Joe's work though.
Yes.
It does do good shows.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's where I met Loser Magnet, and I had no idea that was like their first show. Was like so yeah, we have them the first week. Then the next week, Druzy Rose. I really like this band because I feel like they in town have a similar predicament to like where we're at. Like we kind of get thrown a lot of labels that like really aren't. It's just like, oh yeah, they're like a jam band, right? They're like, no, have you ever seen them play? Like, well, no, they're like they're in the jam scene, right? I'm just like, not really, and it's just like I've had that label. It's like, oh yeah, you're like in the. I'm like, no,
really?
Yeah. So it's like I wanted to have.
I'm baffled. Like, wow.
I don't know, but I feel like they're another band that unfairly kind of like gets. It's like, oh yeah, you're kind of like this type of music, right? And they're like, no, it's just like, but they're a really great live band. I mean, like there's definite like influences for all across the board. But I feel like that's kind of what I do in my music as well, is just kind of borrow things that I like from stuff, various, and just kind of put it together in a way that kind of sounds like me. And then, so the next week, the Orange Goodness, this is going to be like their side project, members of the Orange Goodness, Michael from that band, who if you've never seen play music, wow, they're really, really good at playing music. Like Mike is a really good guitar player. He's going to get, I believe, Matt Patrick from Library Studio, and he's done session work with a bunch of different bands and great musician. Sean Troth from Dream Crusher and Enemy Planes on, and then a bunch of people that are to be announced. So it's a kind of like a side project of side projects of really good musicians. That's like in
the side project supergroup a little bit.
Yeah. And then because I want to stick to my ethic of like DIY, of just like, I always kind of want to, because the door was held open to me, I want to have the door held open for someone else. Anytime I do something like this, I bring someone from out of town.
Yeah.
So the fourth week, my friend Mike Munson, I don't know if you're familiar with Mike Munson, from the Driftless area down in, although I think he lives in Wisconsin at this point. I also don't want to blow up where Mike lives either.
Yeah.
He's a phenomenal.
We're not just doxing people on the air.
Like on the podcast. He's an amazing guitar player, and he usually when I play Winona or La Crosse or Rochester, we try to share bills because it's like, but it's not the first time I've brought him up here, so I'm really excited to have him play, because if you haven't seen him, you're in for a treat. So that's going to be the fourth week. And then the last week, speaking of people who are coming in from out of town, this is kind of like a local connection, but they're coming in from New Orleans. 26 Bats
They're located in New Orleans now?
Yeah.
I have not kept up on the lore besides just like the new music. Is it like Bailey and Carl? Or
Bailey and Carl. So like Lucid Vanguard is going to be on a few bills in May. Like it ended up being like really serendipitous. Like I just saw, I think Bailey put on their Twitter like, "Hey, Minneapolis, get at me in May." I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, so I figured, and
I'm
then
in Minneapolis, and I would like to get involved.
So I saw on their calendar, like they just basically, like 26 Bats has a few shows. They're basically playing a few of their friends' release shows. They got one at the beginning of the month. They're going to close mine, and but I also saw Lucid Vanguard has a few bills in town. So like I think they're just
sick.
in the Twin Cities for a short time, and they're like, we're trying to like let's. Like who's doing a cool thing? Let's get on that bill. I was like, I got a cool thing. Yeah. So like, I'm really excited that they're going to be closing. Cause like every single one of these bills would be like $15 at Ice House, and they're all free.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a Tuesday night, awesome. But like every bill is like definitely worthy of that cover charge. And there isn't one.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I'm excited that they're going to be back, and also heartbroken that they are no longer based here.
I think they're going to make a effort to come back, but they have a few things like on the books in New Orleans, like already. Like it's like they're kind of
stoked for them, kind of whatever. Even if like I'm selfishly like, man,
I know. So I'm excited they could even do it. Yeah, because like I feel try to come every week, but like. Seriously, you don't want to miss that one.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Describe or like talk about a moment when you really felt like your music was accomplishing or fulfilling what you aspired for it to do, or what you wanted, whether that was playing live as Theyself or in a different band, or just like getting to listen back to something, or some other just serendipitous, beautiful moment that happens in the life of a musician where you really... It's just, you felt the appreciation. You're like, this is why I do this. This is why I want to do this.
Yeah.
And you're just really kind of stoked on it. I don't know.
I think for me, it's always like, I don't know if it's just growing up in Philly and that just gives you like a permanent chip on your shoulder. But like, I think one of my favorite moments was being on one of those bills that just like, Have you ever like loaded into a bill and you just know it's not going to work out? Like,
Yes.
like it was one of
Without
those.
hesitation.
It was one of those nights, and it was like it was right after one of the big street festivals had gotten out, and it was like a gig at the Acadia, and it was like the only thought put into it was like, we're gonna have a lot of street traffic. Just throw anyone on stage. Who cares? You know, like so I was stage managing the Stone Arch Festival.
Oh, cool. I didn't know you stage managed. That's fantastic.
At the time, the headliner was Soul Asylum, and it was
Love that.
It
I
was
love
like
Alex
this.
Cheese Runner.
It was like this weird like time is a flat circle moment because. So when I first started out here, one of the first places we would play is the 400 bar, run by the Sullivan brothers, and one of the Sullivans actually really liked me. You know, it's why we kept. But the other Sullivan,
Oh
fucking
boy.
hated me, like almost to a point where like I would make a bit of it, where like when he knew like he would be working the night, and he would just immediately be grumpy, and I'd just be like, come on, how about a smile? And he would just like kind of like, you know, it's like that kid. I don't like that kid. Just years of just like, man, we're playing the 400. It's like, wait, which Sullivan's going? Like just trying to avoid him. Lo and behold, the Sullivan that did not like me is now Soul Asylum's tour manager.
Oh boy.
So I'm working this gig and I'm already like having to manage 2 stages at once, and I got to deal with Soul Asylum, whose tour rig, half of it is still in Toronto, and they're navigating trying to find like how are they going to play this show. And I was like, oh great. He is like, and he didn't remember me. And I was just like, oh okay, all I got to do is do a good job and he's not going to remember me. And this is kind of the theme of this story is like, all you got to do is like really just kind of like do your best to like, it's not about like doing the job. It's like kind of like the way that you do it and the energy that you put forth. But like, so everything kind of goes on without a hitch until we finally get the gig running, and then something like just starts not going well, and it was like weird, like you could see it in his face. Like he realized like something went wrong, and then he finally realized who I was, and it like you could slowly, it's like, it's that kid, you know. So like, and even like my good ideas, you'd just be like, yeah, do this or that, and then it's like, it was over. So like after that gig, I had to, I have to deal with getting Soul Asylum on and off stage, and like, and the band was great, like they were, they had Michael Bland drumming, because like it was, it's just like he was still in town, and it's just like, and actually it was funny. Dave Perner, we didn't have towels, so he accidentally just took a box of like volunteer shirts, because he's like, oh man, these are soft, and I was like, yeah, they're good shirts, and I turn around and he just took the box because there was no towels.
Oh my
I'm like,
God.
I'm just like, I think Dave Perner. And I'm not gonna say no to Dave. It's like Dave Perner just has our towels now. That was it. But like he was really, really great to work with. But like it was just like, yeah, I get it. That's so like I'm dealing with that and realizing like all the fallout of just like, okay, this is all my fault. we have no towels because I let the headliner basically take all of this. And, so I'm leaving that, and then immediately I have to play this gig at the Acadia because there was a touring band that like we were talking about the Leap of Faith. They were just like, the people who organized this show just didn't show up. So we have 2 bands from Milwaukee just like, are we supposed to play? So like I just come in and like we're like, all right, we just need a local act on that bill. And then they threw someone up to open, and the crowd was like just terrible. Like they were so mean for some reason. And like, it just like, I just remember going like, all right, I'm going to go up next. And I just started playing a set, and I got the crowd to like turn around. And it's like always these situations, like not the situations like, oh yeah, like everything went well. It's just like, no, everything had to go wrong for everything to go right. And it's just like this, like for some reason I love these situations where it's just like, I feel like every like either I have to play angry or like people are angry, and it's just like, all right, I'm gonna turn this around. And then by the end of that set, like the crowd was like there to see a show, and I was like, okay, great, now let's get these touring acts.
Yeah, we've converted the energy, got them in the right headspace.
It was like I think that was like the most fulfilling thing of just like taking just kind of taking these bad beats all day, and then just still making the most of everything, of just like, oh, this isn't going well, this guy hates me, I'm gonna get eaten alive by this
stole
guy.
My towels.
It's just like, but by the end of it, Dave Perner had a good time, they played a good set, we made it through. Like this, like my arch nemesis is like yelling at me, but like he didn't kill me by the end of it.
Always
the local bands didn't show up, but we made it work. And I think for me, that was just like a big metaphor for like my entire career of just like, it's never going to happen the way you think it is, but you can always make the best with what you're dealt.
This doesn't mean don't have a plan, but also don't get too aggressively attached to it, especially if you're on like a DIY level.
Yeah,
or
like
working with a lot of moving parts.
Trust me, like you definitely want to have a plan when you're touring, but like just expect things to go wrong. I mean, like I feel like a plan is just like, you keep a blanket and granola bars in the car.
Like have a backup.
We don't want like a Chris McCandless situation. Like we was like full Dream of the Wild. But yeah, like best laid plans. It's just like they're always going to test. It's like the universe is always going to test. Like, do you really want this? Do you really want this? Like, and something is going to present itself that, you're either going to get through this situation with a renewed level of love for what you do, or you're going to be like, yep, this is not for me. And like every single time where it gets really bad, where like most people would be like, okay, this is not for me, for some reason I'm just like, this feels like I should be doing this. And that was one of those nights where it's just like, you know what, for some reason I think I should be doing
this feels like the right path.
Great.
What's something that you love or even just appreciate? I'm reluctant to use the L word with their own art. But like, what's something that you love about the art that you make, whether it's as Theyself, whether like any other band, or just even about your own creative process?
I love everything I've done for different reasons. And I think that's part of the reason why like I've kind of done a different thing every single time, is just kind of allowing
like a lot of different a lot of different fires.
But just kind of allowing myself to explore what I love about this. Like I didn't know what I wanted out of it. I just knew I had to be near it. And I think that just kind of led me to multiple levels of appreciation of just, because I do like listening to everything, and I like playing a little bit of everything. But I think now, to put it simply, it's just fun to play live. Like it's like,
I hope so.
Well, yeah, it just still is. Like there's I don't know if it's like a sensory input thing of just it feels good to actually be able to manipulate the vibe, so to speak, and actually change it and turn it up, turn it down, and change the mood and actually have influence over that, and then realize it's kind of a conversation. And whatever I think that's my favorite thing about it, is like when you get into that moment where you're actively communicating with the audience. And I think people always try to take that as like a specific feeling, when it's like, it's a different thing every time. Like you have to get vulnerable and make that connection each time. But I think that's my favorite aspect of it, like finding a way to get the butterflies, like get to that flow state of every single show, because that is, for me, that's like the fastest place I achieve that state. And so maybe it's like from a selfish perspective of just like, oh yeah, this is like my moment. But it's just like, it's not really about being in the spotlight. I think like it's like something about live music. There's like a Zen state of like, I think being, like with the anxiety and ADHD, like overthinking everything. It's like that one moment where it's like, oh, I'm actually not thinking about anything. And it's kind of, there's it's like one of the few moments where like that actually happens, and there's something just it's fun. It's just like it's especially when it's through loudspeakers, it gets even more fun. But yeah, to put it simply, I just think live music still hasn't gotten old. You know, like I like listening to records and I like making them, but I think like it's easy to kind of fall out of love with that because like content is just so readily available. Yeah. And there is just something at the end of the day about either seeing a performer that you really love live, like that's invigorating, or
it's so special.
Yeah. And it's not even about the shows where it's like, oh, we just played in front of 5,000 people, which is fun. And that was great. And that memory, like I can still see that crowd in my mind's eye. Like I still have that memory, but like I still have great memories of just like some of the best shows we ever played were to 15 people in Rockford, Illinois. Like for some reason that house show is also burned into my memories. It's like, it's not about
like the equivalency despite the discrepancy.
It's like, it's not, it's like, it really is an energy thing. And like, I've also played, you know, big festival things where it's just like, yeah, technically we played in front of 2,000 people, but I don't think any of those people care. you know,
they're
like
in the field, but they're not listening.
Yeah, you know, like I've had the yin and yang of like the big materialistic thing where it's like, wow, you guys are killing it. You must be happy, and then you play that thing, and you're like, that was the worst gig we've ever done. That's like, and everyone's just like, man, you must be so happy. They're like, yeah, you know. And then you
see like the pain screaming in your eyes,
right? You're just like, why?
Awesome.
What are we doing? It's like, so that's, you know, that's why when Wednesday put that stuff out, I like really felt for it, because like you can tell they were just like, dude, we didn't ask for this. Like we
just want to like make our music and go out there and do our thing.
We did ask for this because like it's your dream to perform it, but it's like we didn't ask for like all the nonsense that comes
all the nonsense
with it. And it's just like I guess I'm telling that parable of just like, sometimes the thing you thought you wanted out of this, like sometimes you might be lucky enough to get it, and it is luck, but it is also like a lot of hard work makes people lucky. So it's like, I think
simple math. Yeah.
That's why I can't be a hater, because like when I was younger, I was an insufferable hater because I thought I was like clever too. Like I thought I was funny. So I was insufferable. But like, I don't want to be a hater now because I know how hard it is to do anything, like even bad media, quote unquote, bad. Like it's hard to do anything. It's hard to get any show to run on time. It's hard to make sure tours happen with like no mishaps. So it's just like
a tour with no mishaps.
I'm trying not to be a hater of anything, just because it's like, it's really hard to do anything, like even mediocre things. So like if you're out there doing it, I'm rooting for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, the time kind of adds that the benefit of that perspective.
Sure.
So I appreciate that. Cool. Just to kind of wrap up here even more so, last little question.
Yeah.
Because I like ending every interview the same way. We already kind of got ahead of this when you're talking about your residency, so definitely like scrub back, listen, like jot down all those names, check out those artists and those bands.
Yes, please do. But every genre is different. That's another thing I wanted to do. Each week is going to be a little different.
But what are some other local favorites or local artists, bands, or even bands you've met on tour or elsewhere that you want to shine a little spotlight on that you think deserve some extra love today?
So specifically local, I think if you're into the type of music I'm digging, you should check out The Nunnery and Humbird.
I love The Nunnery.
Because they're both people that are really
Humbird
nice.
Is Theory, right?
Yeah, Theory.
Yeah. No, I graduated high school with their little brother.
Oh, nice.
Which
Yeah,
is how I heard
awesome
about Humbird. And so echoing both of those, that's great.
Definitely check out their bands. But as far as stuff that like I just like and I think are doing really cool music from the local scene right now, I gotta give a shout out to Scrunchies.
Love Scrunchies.
Definitely check out Scrunchies. And Did
so
you say
many.
national as well,
like
or just
if
local?
you come like just, I guess anyone you think is like underappreciated or that you want to like like definitely emphasizing local or local music podcast for the most part, but also don't want to like offer any limitations because there's just so much wonderful music out there.
I feel like a lot of the people that I feel like are underappreciated are on the residency bill, which is kind of like
even if they weren't, definitely like I said, scrub back, check out all those people.
Oh yeah, I definitely tried to arrange that bill of people that I think are like, this is an amazing show. Like what? Like these are all bands where it's like I feel like this band should be more well known than they are. So it's like definitely the bands on the residency, but also I think as far as local acts that I have been trying to consistently listen to, I don't know if you're hip to the band Products. You should check out that band.
I love them.
That I think they're just, as far like the complete products, like they have
One
the
of the
look,
best.
they have they have the music,
years.
and they have been killing it for years. Like they've been a band where like it's just like I feel like now it's like, oh, have you heard this new band Products? It's like I feel like their first record came out in like 2017.
Yeah, new band.
Like this, it's like I feel like I feel like they're a band that's like finally
Joe's
getting their
been around
due.
forever. Just like
With the Florists and like so it's like they've all been in several projects that are great. It's like about time that like that's actually coming together and
give those folks their flowers. They've been
seriously, because like they deserve it. And it's like hard to narrow it down too, because like I definitely think
number of bands. There's a limitation just for time and our memories.
Absolutely,
where we'd be here for the next like 12 hours. We just start like listing every local band we think is at least pretty cool.
But I feel like the main bands that I didn't mention are like already on the, like Mike Munson is that guitarist that I feel like when people's like, so who's your favorite guitarist to watch? It's like Mike Munson. You should watch Mike Munson. Like he's a really great, like it's not just in terms of ability, like texture, like his music just feels good to listen to. And it's just like, and Mike Michael of the Orange Goodness is another musician where it's just like, oh yeah, like just watch them do what they do. And I think as far as like producing and songwriting, 26 Bats is one of those bands. Like it's like I'm so psyched that they could do this, because like
back to the back catalog, they've got
they've been killing it for so long that it's like I'm psyched that they like are actually able to do this, because it's just like, well, they should keep doing it, because like they have it.
And like that whole like crew with like Vanguard with the there's like 4 or 5 projects that are like all in like
they're all
cinematic universe.
Every single musician is still creating great work too in their own universe. So I'm sure the second I leave and I turn my car on, I'm gonna think of like 5 more bands where it's just like, oh, I can't believe it's like, but I definitely already mentioned Double Grave, because that's another band of just like incredibly nice people that you should be listening to from here. I think everyone else is like folks that don't actually live here, which if you're from Duluth, check out Superior Siren. That's an amazing collective of musicians. And if you're in, let's see, Rochester, Bird Cop is kind of a cool band out of
Bird
Rochester.
Cop.
Yeah. Rochester's got some really cool bands like Clay Fulton, The Lost 40s, really, really good. Rochester actually has a really strong scene all around. Like Jay Havoc is a cool rapper from Rochester. And so Winona, let's see, a lot of the bands.
Party Chop Silence is from there.
Yeah, like Weeds Records, one of the kind of someone affiliated in the Karate Chop Silence universe, is like kind of started a record label putting out a lot of the bands that like are making music that like you wouldn't see unless like you were either friends with them or like you lived in Winona. Like so it's like they're creating a lot of stuff. Like there's this project of I believe it's a few members of a few different bands called Doug Boodle. that's like really new, and they only have a live album, so they just released. It's like Live at Ed's No Name Bar, and
nice.
it's like it's like, but a lot of that crew, Karate Chop Silence, the Reach Outs, the Ultrasounds, definitely check out that stuff. Goodnight Gold Dust, Silver Summer, that's like the Mankato side of things, and then any band Liz Draper is playing bass in. Probably going to be good.
Okay. Cool.
I'll leave it at that.
I think that'll keep people busy for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, people can find the 1500 EP.
Bandcamp
anywhere. Streaming anywhere. They can find
anywhere.
Just since you had a busy February release wise. After the Snow, the LPF album also recently came out.
Yeah, we released that in February. We have a link tree, but that's also the new LPF. Please stream that. I had a lot
fantastic.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun recording both those records, but like the guitar work was really fun on this record. So please listen to it. It's available anywhere, but the streaming services are fine.
Yeah.
You can go to theyself.com, but like it's all Bandcamp is fine, but it's all the same.
Obviously, have the residencies coming up in May, so stay tuned for those.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to plug? Or
thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Ear Coffee. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.